Hello and welcome to the MyHeritage webinar series. I'm Miriam Pierre-Louis, your host, broadcasting to you live from Eastern Massachusetts. Today we have Catherine Schober, who is with us live in Oregon for her class, Working with German Vital Records you find on MyHeritage. Thanks to Catherine and thanks to the over 1,000 of you for registering for today's live webinar. So wherever and whenever you are, glad to have you with us. And now to introduce our speaker. Catherine Schober is a German-English genealogy speaker, author, and translator specializing in Old German handwriting. She's the author of The Magic of German Church Records and Tips and Tricks of Deciphering German Handwriting. You can find her website at Germanologyunlocked.com. I love the name of that. Please put your virtual hands together and let's give Catherine Schober a nice, warm webinar welcome. Catherine, how are you? Welcome to the webinar.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, we are delighted to be learning about German records from you. And your screen looks great. The time is all yours.
Well, thank you, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today from wherever in the world you are watching. I am very excited to present Working with German Vital Records you find on MyHeritage. Vital records can be amazing sources of information, and I am looking forward to showing you today how you can extract that information for your German ancestors without needing to work with that entire record. We are going to make this a lot less overwhelming. So how this presentation is going to work is first, we are going to talk about what you need to know about vital records in general, some basic background information. Then we'll talk about how to find these records on MyHeritage in particular. I was playing around with this last week and I was able to find so many records for my ancestors in just a few minutes. So I'm excited to show you that. Then we're going to get into individual records. The three main types of vital records are, of course, birth records, marriage records, and death records. We're going to look at each record individually, and I'm going to show you different clue words that you can identify to extract your ancestors' information from that part of the record without needing to know too much German or too much of that old German handwriting that was used before the 1940s and 50s in Germany. And then at the end, I hope you've been paying close attention during that presentation because there's going to be a fun little test to see how much you learned. So get out those notebooks, get out a Word document. I'm going to be mentioning a lot of different clue words during this talk. So make sure you have something to write down the words with and pay attention for that little test at the end. So first, these are what the vital records will look like. These records, as a general rule, began to be kept in the German Empire in 1876. That was when the entire German Empire said the government needs to keep track of people's births, marriages, and deaths. However, if you're lucky, some areas began these civil records in the 1790s or the early 1800s. Those were more the areas that had been conquered by Napoleon, who then introduced this record-keeping system into the regions he had conquered. So on your handout, I put a list from the Family Search Wiki of the different areas and which states they started this record-keeping system. So I hope that you have some ancestors from the earlier areas, but if not, 1876 was the general rule. Before you get started working with these records, I would highly recommend checking out the Germany Civil Registration page on Family Search Wiki. It's a wonderful guideline of background information, resources, and everything you can expect to find with these records, and will just give you a great head start to work with them. And today we are going to talk about the collections that you can find on MyHeritage and the amazing resources you can find here. But just in case your records haven't been digitized yet, I did want to let you know that all hope is not lost. These records were kept at the local level in Germany, and they were kept at the local registry office. So if you are unable to find your records online, don't give up. Go to Google, type in the name of your ancestor's hometown, plus the word Standesamt. That word Standesamt is the German word for registry office. You can then reach out to them via the contact form or the email address on their website and ask if there are any records available for your specific ancestor. And on your handout, I also gave you a website for a list of the different registry offices in Germany. So check that out too. But luckily for us, MyHeritage has wonderful, wonderful collections where you can find so many of these vital records. Like I said, in just a few minutes, I found multiple records for my own German ancestors. So some of the collections that you might want to look at on MyHeritage to find these vital records include Germany, births and baptisms from 1558 to 1898. Of course, you would be looking at the tail end of this record collection as I mentioned, 1876 is our magic year for the German Empire as a whole. Germany marriages, 1558 to 1929 is also a good collection to use, as is the deaths and burials, of course, for our death records. And then I myself found a number of records in this collection, North Rhine-Westphalia, the deaths of 1874 to 1938. That was a big gold mine for me. And then if you have ancestors from Hesse, you're also in luck. They have a birth collection, a marriage collection, and a death collection. So the general ones plus the specific states will be great resources for you to use to find your German ancestors' vital records. So how do you do this? How do you find these records on MyHeritage? Let's go over to the site, and this is what it looks like. To get to this screen, all you need to do is go to the research button up here and then click search all records. What you can then do is type in your ancestor's name and as much information as you know. If you don't know as much information as you wish, or as I'm going to show you here, that's okay. You might just need to browse through more records to narrow it down once you get all those search results. But for me, I knew that my ancestor was named Julius Otto. His last name is Müller. And you can also click match the name exactly, or if you would like it to show you multiple possible spelling variations, you can leave this blank. I like to include the umlaut for my Miller ancestors. For those of you new to German, the umlaut is that 2 dots over an A, an O, and a U. But you can also represent those 2 dots by just putting an E after the letter. So you can either do an AE, an OE, or a UE, or put the 2 dots over the letter yourself. I know that he was born in 1853 and that he lived in Durban at some point during his life. You can also add any details down here if you know any other relationships related to him or any other life events, siblings, keywords, etc. So there's a lot of great search features that you can use to narrow down the results that you will get. I would then press search. And sure enough, first and foremost, I get this vital record here. You can see it comes from the collection of North Rhine-Westphalia, deaths 1874 to 1938. So if you get this little icon here, that's going to be a record. If you get this icon here, that's going to show you information from a family tree. So for our purposes today, we want to look for the records. We can then click on it. You get the transcribed index information here. And then you can scroll down and then click on these arrows to get the record itself. You can then zoom in on it, or you can download it by this download button here. So that is one way to find the record. Another thing you can do is if you are not really sure about names or you don't have too much information, you can look in individual collections. So to do that, you again go to research, and then you can go to the collection catalog. You get a lot of great collections here, but for our purposes today, we're going to narrow it down by location. So we'll go to Europe, and then we'll refine further by going to Germany. And then you get all of the different collections that I had mentioned before. So if I knew that my ancestors came from North Rhine-Westphalia and I wanted to only look in those death records to narrow down my search, I could click here and then enter all of their information here and press search to only look in that specific collection. So there's two different ways to search. One, by doing what we did first and searching all of the collections as a whole. Or if you know you're only looking for a marriage record from Hesse, for example, or a death record from North Rhine-Westphalia, you can go to the collection catalog, refine your search by your location, and only search in that specific catalog. So two great ways to search on MyHeritage. So for me, this was the record I found. This is actually a picture I have of Julius Otto. Wonderful sideburns, don't you think? And this is the record that I would then want to try to decipher. Now, if some of you aren't familiar with that crazy handwriting that's on there, that is the old German script. And this was actually a different type of script, a different alphabet almost, that was used before the 1940s and 50s in the German-speaking countries. So you will have to familiarize yourself at least a little bit with the script. And to help you, I put a key at the bottom of your handout, on that last page of your handout, to give you a little bit of a head start with that crazy handwriting. But the good thing about these forms is that they are not only in the handwriting. There is some typed text as well, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So that was our background information. We talked about how you can find these records on MyHeritage. Now our question is, how do we actually get our ancestors' information from these records? Well, let's start with birth records. Why would we even want to look at birth records? What information can we find? You can find the name of the child's parents, the maiden name of the mother. So this could help you start researching an additional line in your family tree that you hadn't known already. These forms will often give an exact street address, which is so cool because then you can go look up the address on Google Maps and maybe you can even go visit there someday. So finding that exact house number is amazing. The religion of the person will often be listed here. For birth records, you will often get the date and the exact time of birth. Our German ancestors were very detailed, and you can find out the exact time your ancestor was born. And then, of course, you'll get the child's name as well. So a lot of great information on these birth records. So how do we actually decipher them? First and foremost, one tip that I want to make sure you know is in the corner of your certificate, either on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, will be a letter. That letter will be A, B, or C. The letter A will mean it's a birth certificate. The letter B will mean it's a marriage certificate. And marriage certificates will always be 2 pages. So look for that second page for a marriage certificate. And then the letter C, I'm sure you can now guess, will be a death certificate. So A for birth, B for marriage, 2 pages for marriage, and then C for death. So just by looking at that letter, you'll already know what type of form it is. All of these forms will start with a number at the top you don't really need to pay attention to that number. That's just for administrative purposes and does not have anything to do with your ancestor in particular. On that second line, this will be true for all of the forms as well. That second line, first word, will be the town. So that's going to be the town where the certificate was issued, that first word. And now we're ready for our first clue word. So get out your notebook. We're starting our list of clue words that you can use to extract your ancestors' information. Clue word number 1 is the word in German. In German means on. And what that on means here is on a specific date. So if you see the word that means a date will follow. And here, the date is going to be the date the certificate was issued. So and then here we get the 19th of November, 1898. I think most of you probably could have figured out that that number at the top is a date. It has numerals. It's pretty obvious. But sometimes those dates will be written out in words instead of numerals. So knowing that the word precedes a date and means on, especially if your date is written out in only letters, will help you to figure out what it is. One other thing I wanted to make you aware of with dates is the period. In German, to signify the 19th th, for example, a ordinal number, they will put a period after the number. So if you see 19 period, that just means the 19th of November. One other way to signify this instead of a period is by using the suffix ten. So 10. So if you see 19 and then ten, that means the 19th as well. So period or the ten is going to make it that date, that 19th of November. Now moving on, we are going to get the declarant's name next. So the person who came to the registry office and reported that a birth occurred. Our clue word to find the declarant's name is going to be the word Kant, K-A-N-N-T. Now that word by itself does not mean anything. And that's why the scribe or the registrar would have had to put a prefix right here. If it's the word bekannt, which is what is here, B-E, that means that the person who came to the registrar and reported the birth, his identity was already known to the registrar. The registrar knew who he was. That means known. If you get some writing here, some words on these two lines, plus the words anerkannt, so A-N-E-R here, that means that the person's identity was verified by whichever document was written here. So if you have writing on these lines, that means that the person was not known to the registrar and he had to show his passport or his baptismal certificate to prove his identity. So after this word, the Kant, you are then going to get the person's name who came to report the birth. And here we have the name Johann Zula. Now, one extra tip that I wanted to tell you about these records is on vital records. In my experience, always, I'm always hesitant to say always in genealogy, but in my experience, always, the occupation will be right before the name. So I have a lot of clients who would see this phrase right here and think that this is all one name, but it's actually the person's name preceded by the occupation. And what that says is der Anstreicher, which means the painter, Johann Zula. So you will get the occupation first, then your ancestor's name. Now you might be thinking, oh, that looks scary to translate and to transcribe from that handwriting. Even with the key I have on my handout, that looks kind of overwhelming. Well, I wanted to give you one great website tip that I like to try to mention in every presentation because it is so helpful with the handwriting. So when I was first starting out, I taught myself the handwriting. I had no formal handwriting experience. So I taught myself. And what I would do is that I would write down the letters that I recognized and leave a blank for the letters that I didn't. I could then see the word as a whole, and maybe my mind would be able to fill in the blanks looking at that word all written out. But you might be thinking, well, yeah, that makes sense. I could do that in English, but I don't have any German in my brain. So how would my brain fill in those German letters? That's where my favorite website comes in. And that website is called wordmine.info. What you can then do is click words starting with or words ending in. So if you recognize more letters at the beginning, you could choose words starting with, or more letters at the end, words ending in. So let's say, make sure you do German. And this is really cool. If you have different languages you're working with in genealogy, you can use this website for these languages as well. But we'll stick with German. Let's say you couldn't figure out those first two letters, but you got the end. Press search, and it will give us 11 words ending in that combination. And look, first and foremost is actually the correct answer, Anstreicher. So if you didn't recognize all of those letters together, let's say you couldn't get that C, you might get a couple more words there, but it still gives you correct answers. So play around with it. You can use multiple wildcard asterisks if there's multiple letters you can't recognize. You can narrow down your list by clicking here and choosing the number of letters in your word. If you get hundreds of answers, count the number of letters and narrow it down. But this is something that I definitely used every day when I was first starting out, and it's something I probably use about every other day now. So it's still worth checking out for those hard to read words. All right, so we have the person who reported the birth's name. We have his occupation. Now we want to get the mother's name. Our next clue word to find the mother's name is actually a phrase. And that is the phrase von der. What that means in German is of the, and it signifies or implies born of the. So the child was born of the woman, born of the mother. So after that, born of the is going to come the mother's name. That's what it looks like. For those of you new to German genealogy, this typed text might look a little old-fashioned to you, a little funky. This typed text is actually called Fraktur. That's Fraktur. And it was the type of German text that was used in newspapers and on forms for their printed text. Luckily, it's not as hard to read as the handwriting, but I'll show you a little trick to deciphering it in just a second. There is our mother's name right after of the, born of, and then we get the name Elisabeth Zula. So the mother's name right after von der. Now let's say you remember from this presentation, von der, of the, are the words you need to look for to find your mother's name. But you really are getting a little bit confused with that typed Fraktur, that typed text. What you can then do is go to this great website called the Schrift, which is the German word for script, the script generator website. I put the link on your handout, and this is what it looks like. You'll want to scroll down to this text box, and then you want to find out what the words von der look like in that old-fashioned Gothic-looking text. So you can type it in here, press enter, and then you'll want to click the text here that best matches the printed text on your form. So that would be what you are looking for in that typed text. The cool thing about this website is you can also do it for the old German script. So let's say you know your last name was Zula, like we had for the mother, but you weren't sure what that last name should look like in the old German handwriting. Type it in, press enter, and then choose the script that best matches that of your document. And then you can see, okay, that's what that should look like in the old German handwriting. Let me go to my form and see if I can find a match. So using this for either the handwriting or the printed text to find those clue words such as fonder can be a huge, huge help, especially when you're first getting started. All right, so we have the mother's name. I mentioned for these certificates, however, you'll also get her maiden name, which is huge in genealogy. So our clue word for the maiden name, I bet some of you might know this one already. To find the maiden name, we want to look for the word geboren, and it might have an extra suffix on the end depending on the grammar. That's what that extra en is. But geboren is going to be our clue word, and it's going to mean ne, which means that the mother's maiden name will follow. Here is the word in the old German handwriting. Again, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you don't know what that word geboren should look like in the script, hop on over to our script generator website, type it in there, pick the one that best matches your document, and you can see then if you can match it up with your certificate. So there's our word geboren. Sometimes this word means born. It can either mean born or it can mean ne. We'll talk about more the other meaning later, but for this purpose, it's going to show that the maiden name will follow. And here our maiden name is Jędruszek, which is quite a mouthful. So look for geboren, maiden name will follow. Now with last names, especially maiden names that you haven't seen before, they can be very difficult to decipher because you can't really just go to a dictionary and look them up and hope that you are correct and that's going to be the last name that you will now research. You want to really be sure that you're reading every letter correctly before you start researching. So one website that I like to use to double check last names is GeoGen. The link is on your handout. Let's pop over to GeoGen. This is what it looks like. This country here is a map of Germany, and it's going to show you the occurrences of those last names in Germany. So let's say our last name was Jędruszek. We'll type it in here, press enter, and it shows us where Jędruszek appears in Germany. And the higher the column, the more people living there with that last name exist. So you want to make sure that these columns are appearing in the place where your record comes from. If your record comes from up here in northwestern Germany, but the last name is only appearing down here, that is probably a sign that you've transcribed something incorrectly. Last names really tend to be associated with certain areas in Germany, so much that German speakers can often guess where a person comes from after they hear their last name. And of course, some people moved around, but as a general rule, you want to make sure that that last name is something that exists in your area. So for example, let's say we read it wrong and we thought it was that last name and we get nothing found. So that doesn't mean 100% that we're wrong, but it does give us a clue that we do want to go check our handwritten word and make sure that we really read everything correctly. Now, if you're getting nothing on GeoGen, but you're still pretty certain you're reading all of those letters correctly, there's one other way to check. And this is to go to Google and type in your last name guess, your transcription guess, plus the word Nachname. The word Nachname in German is the word for surname. And Googling in German will actually provide you with a lot more relevant results than Googling in English. So if you get results, so for example, you can click on these websites, and if they seem to have to do with last names, Or if you really aren't sure, you can actually copy and paste the link into Google Translate, and it will translate the website into English for you. Or you can just click here, translate this page, and it will do it into English for you. And if those websites are about last names and it's saying that Jędruszek is a last name, you can be then confident that your transcription guess is correct. If you're not getting any hits, or you're only getting hits in India or Africa for a German last name, you then want to go back to your transcription and see if you maybe missed a letter or two. So definitely try to verify those maiden names before moving on. So we have the mother's name, we have the mother's maiden name. Now the other person who's important in the birth is the father. The way to find the father's name is our next clue word, and that word is Ehefrau. The word Ehefrau means wife. So if we have the word wife, that's going to be related to the husband. So it makes sense that the husband's name would be around the word wife, because we'd say wife of so-and-so. One good tip for finding the word Ehefrau is looking for the letter U. There aren't many words in German that end in U. And in the old German handwriting, a U will often have this nice, or will always have this swoop over it. And I like to think of the swoop as the bottom part of a smiley face. So it helps me remember it in a little goofy way. So if you see a word ending with a U with that little smile above it, that very well could be Ehefrau. You could also type in the word Ehefrau on our script generator. And then we went to look for the husband's name after. Now here there's nothing. So what that tells me is that the husband has already been mentioned. If there's nothing here, that is a clue that the husband was the declarant. The husband was the person who came to the registrar and said, my child was born. So if there is a name here after Ehefrau, that will be the husband. If there is nothing after Ehefrau, very, very likely that the father, the husband, was that name we already deciphered at the top, the person who came and reported the birth. So our husband was our painter from the very beginning, Johann Zula. Next, we want to get where they lived, and that luckily is another great clue word, and we're going to talk about this clue word in every subsequent certificate, so pay close attention. That is the phrase wohnhaft zu. That phrase means residing in. So we're going to have this in every certificate, wohnhaft zu. Remember it, residing in. There it is in the script. And our town here is the town of Oppum. Now, if you're lucky, the town will be the same place that was written at the top where the certificate was issued. However, you might get a different town nearby if they lived in a smaller village. So wohnhaft zu, residing in. Then, as promised, you'll get the religion, and that luckily is a very, very easy clue word, religion. So it looks exactly the same, pronounced a little different, but right before the word religion or religion will be our religion. And this family was Catholic or Katholisch. So before the word religion will be usually Catholic, Protestant, or sometimes Jewish on these records as well. Then, of course, on the birth certificate, we want to get the date of birth. So remember, which clue word did I talk about for the date? If you remembered very good. Remember, our word is going to signify a date will follow. And you can see here, as mentioned, there's no nice numerals. So we really need to remember that clue word means on, and it's going to mean the date will follow. Now, in German, the dates will be written day, month, year. So the day will be first, and that's going to be the 15th, followed by the month. And here we have that nice T-E-N. Remember that T-E-N means that ordinal number. 15th is our T-E-N, followed by the month, which is November, followed by that long year written out, and that is the way they wrote out 1898. So on Family Search again, there's a wonderful Family Search German genealogical word list. If you Google that, the Family Search German genealogical word list, and they have a nice list of numbers, months, and years that you will need to know in German. So I'd highly recommend checking that out. But to find those dates, remember, look for your clue word And then last but not least, at the very bottom of the certificate, you will get the child's name. That child's name will usually be centered in the middle of the line. The clue words that we want to look for the child's name is the word Name, which means name in German. If you have more than one name, like we have here, her name is Elsa Elisabeth, you would get the plural of names, which is just an N at the end, Namen, and then Vornamen means first names. So some variation of the word name, Name, Vorname would be first name, Vornamen, first names. You will get the actual name following that. So Elsa Elisabeth, remember, it will often be centered at the bottom of the certificate following the word Vornamen or Namen. So we did it. From this entire certificate that we found on MyHeritage, we were able to pull out the mother's name by looking for the clue words von der, remember, of the, born of Elizabeth. We were able to find her maiden name by looking for her clue word geboren, which means nay. We were able to find the father's name by looking for our clue word Ehefrau, which means wife. And if nothing was written after wife, like in our case, that means his name was already mentioned as the person reporting the birth. We found his occupation. Remember, on these certificates, the occupation will be directly before the name. He was a painter. We found his place of residence by looking for the phrase wohnhaft zu. We found the religion by our easy clue word religion. Date of birth by using our word am. And then the child's name by using our clue word Vorname or Name, and it's nice and centered right here at the bottom of our certificate. So congratulations, you did it. Everyone give yourself a pat in the back at home. You survived the first and the hardest one, because now things will start to repeat themselves. So let's go on to marriage certificates. What can you find on these marriage records? You can find the date of marriage, and then a lot of information about the bride and the groom. Their names and their occupations, if a female had one, their religion, their dates and places of birth, their places of residence, their parents' name, and their parents' places of residence. So again, allowing you to go back another generation. And then it will often list whether the parents were still alive or whether they were deceased. So this could give you clues as to the parents' life details. And then finally, you'll get information on the witnesses as well. And remember, marriage certificates will have a B over here in the corner, and they will be 2 pages. So don't forget that second page. Now, our first clue word for looking at marriage certificates is actually not a word. It's really, really easy. It's going to be a number. On these certificates, there will be the number 1 and the number 2 on the first page. The number 1 is going to be your groom. The number 2 is going to be your bride. So luckily we start off nice and easy. 1 for the groom, 2 for the bride. Now remember, the occupation will be listed before the groom's name. So here we have the groom's name underlined in blue and his occupation underlined in red. And he is an Arbeiter, and that is a laborer. So the laborer, Heinrich Schultz, is our groom. Now, if you can't figure out that occupation, if you tried WordMine, you tried playing Hangman, and you still are stuck, another tip that you can do to figure it out is typing in your transcription guess plus the German word Beruf, which is the German word for occupation. Again, especially with more old-fashioned occupations, Googling in German will give you more relevant results than Googling in English. So use that word Beruf for your occupation criteria for Google. Type in your transcription guess before, and sure enough, here we get a nice German Wikipedia article all about the word Arbeiter, which is laborer. And again, you can just click translate this page or copy and paste your link into Google Translate to find out what it means in English. Next, we will get the birth date. Now, some of you may remember how we found the birth date from our birth certificate. If you're remembering the clue word that might work for some certificates and that might be accurate. However, for this specific certificate, they use the word geboren. Now remember, in our birth certificate, I said the word geboren can precede a maiden name, meaning nay, but it can also mean born. And here, in this case, the word geboren is going to tell us when the groom was born. So we have born and then his date of birth. And just like before, it's going to be day, month, year. And look at those last three letters. That's our T-E-N. And don't worry if you can't read them. You have your key on your handout. I just wanted to show you what that T-E-N looks like in the old German script. Do you remember what that T-E-N means after a number? If you said T-H, that's that is correct. So this is going to be the 13th of June, and then the year all written out, 1860. So June 13th, 1860, following the word geboren, meaning born. Next, we're going to get our town. This is our same clue word that appeared in the birth certificate. Do you remember those clue words that shows our place of residence? If you said wohnhaft zu, very good job. You're learning already. Look for those words wohnhaft zu, and that means residing in. So just like the birth certificates, you'll find the town after the phrase wohnhaft zu. And they lived in the town of Cura. Now, if you can't read those towns can be just like last names, hard to decipher. One great tool for trying to figure out what that handwritten town is going to Meyer's Gazetteer and using it as a wildcard search. So Meyer's Gazetteer is a collection of hundreds of thousands of towns in pre-World War I Germany. So wonderful, wonderful database. What you can do is type in the letters you recognize, leave an asterisk for the letters you don't, press enter, and then you get a list of towns with that letter combination. So here we have Cura, which is the town on our certificate. And again, you can use multiple wildcards. You can narrow down the list by state. It just is a wonderful way to figure out what that handwritten town might be. If you cannot figure it out from Meyer's Gazetteer, again, Google is a wonderful, easy tool to try to use. I one time was looking for the town of what I thought was Rosenheim with an A in the middle, Germany. So I went to Google, typed in Rosenheim, Germany, and Google was kind enough to correct me and saying, no, that doesn't exist. I'm going to show you the results for Rosenheim, Germany. So letting Google guide you, letting Google correct you by typing in your transcription guess plus a region or a country or a state can really give you a lot of clues to put you in the right direction. Next on these certificates, we're going to get the parents' names. And this is a little bit of German grammar. So if you've started to tune out, come back to me. This is so important for German genealogy in general. What we are going to need here, our clue word here, is going to be the word des, D-E-S. That word des means of the in German. And what it implies in genealogy is son or daughter of. You might also get husband or wife of, but for these certificates, we're going to be looking at Sohn des, son of, or Tochter des, daughter of. And if we're getting Sohn des, son of, what's going to come next? The parents' names. So once you see the phrase son of, scan the line until you see a name. And here you get August Schutz and Eva Rosina. And then we get her maiden name following geboren, and that's Guse. Now you may be wondering what all of this information is up here. That's extra information talking about the dad. It tells us where he died and his occupation. But for our purposes today, if we're just looking for the parents' names, look for your son, des, son of, and then the father's name and the mother's name will follow. Then last but not least for these records, on page 2, do not forget page 2 for marriage certificates, you will get your witnesses. And these can be important people to research for your genealogy as well. Because if they were witnesses for your ancestors, maybe your ancestors were witnesses for them, and you can find more information about your ancestors on their certificates too. So our clue words for the witnesses are luckily just as easy. Number 3 and number 4. So number 1 will be your groom. Number 2 will be your bride. Number 3 will be your witness. And number 4 will be your witness. So our witnesses here are Wilhelm Schmidt and Franz Kotelinski. So 1 groom, 2 bride, 3 and 4 are witnesses. So again, we were able to do it. We found the married couple by looking at number 1 and number 2. And we didn't talk about the bride in this part, but that is because all of the tips, all of the clue words that I showed you for the groom are the exact same for the bride column. So you don't need to relearn more information. Follow the exact same method for the bride. We found the birth dates of the married couple by either looking for our word meaning on, or on this certificate, they use the word geboren, meaning born. We found the place of residence, just like we did on the birth certificate, by using the phrase wohnhaft zu. We found the parents' names by using our des, our D-E-S, which means of. And then we know it's the son of or the daughter of our parents. And then we found the witnesses by looking at the second page, and the numbers 3 and 4 will be the witnesses. So congratulations, you have earned your second trophy of marriage certificates, and it's all downhill from here in more ways than one. Death records will just repeat what we have learned so far. So why would we look at death records? These can be great sources of information as well. You'll find the town and the date of death, the declarant's name. So this is usually someone related to your ancestor who is coming to report the death. And you'll find their name, their occupation, and their place of residence too. And then you'll find all of this information about the deceased person. You'll find their name, their age at the time of death, their religion, their place of residence. Again, you'll often get an exact address, their place of birth, their relationships. So we'll look at that des again. Were they the son of somebody, the daughter of, the wife of, the widow of, etc.? and then the place and their time of death. So great, great sources of information. So to find the deceased person's name, our clue word that we want to look for is the phrase zeigte an. And what that means is reported that. So it's saying that somebody came, the declarant came and reported that, and then the name will follow. Reported that Martha Amelia Anna Weber died. So right after that zeigte an, reported that Martha Amelia Anna Weber died. So you'll find that deceased person's name after zeigte an. Right there. You can see she has 3 names. That was not too uncommon in German genealogy. Then we'll have some repeats of words that we've already learned. The religion, that will show our religion right before. Our wohnhaft zu. Can you remember what wohnhaft zu means? We said residing in. Very good job. And then we get geboren zu, and that's going to mean born in. So she was born in Berlin. That zu means in. So wohnhaft zu, residing in, geboren zu, born in. Then we will get the parents' names, and I bet you might be able to remember which word we need for the parents. If you said des, very good job. Remember, our des means of, and it's going to be Sohn des, son of, or Tochter des, daughter of, the parents' names. So son or daughter of. So here we have the daughter, the Tochter of. Then we look for our name. Maybe you recognize that last name there, and you want to go back from there. And his name is Georg Ferdinand Karl Weber. Also 3 names. Georg Ferdinand Karl Weber. And we don't see another name. So what I wanted to show you here is another important word that may come up in these certificates, and that is the word Anzeigende. If there is not a second parent listed, look for the word Anzeigende, and that word means declarant. So it's referencing the person listed at the top of the certificate who came and reported the death. So Anzeigende, declarant. So the person who reported the death was likely the mother in this case. We had Georg Ferdinand Karl Weber, and then the Anzeigende, which was the mother, the declarant. And then, of course, we'll get the date and the place of death. Our clue word here is one I just mentioned, and that is zu. Remember, wohnhaft zu means residing in. Geboren zu means born in. If you just have zu by itself, like we have here, it just means in. And what's going to follow that is where the person died. And here we have Berlin, and you actually have a street listed as well, and her street was Acker Street 117. So a great address you could actually look up. And then another clue word that we already know is the word am. That's going to be the date she died on. Remember, am means on. And we're going to get the day, followed by that T-E-N, that T-H, so the 11th of the month of August of the year 1880. So remember, it might seem a little bit scary to try to transcribe these dates. Don't forget to use your family search German genealogical word list. If you just Google that, German genealogical word list, all of these numbers, all of these months, and all of these decades will be listed on there. You can then use your script generator website to play around with what the different numbers and months, etc. look like, and see if you can find matches on your handout. And again, underlined in green is going to be our street name. The word Strasse is the word for street. So you have an actual address where she died that you could then look up or maybe even go visit. So that certificate was a breeze. After doing the birth and the marriage, we knew most of our clue words already. So we found the name of the deceased person by looking for that zeigte an, reported that Martha Amelia Anna Weber died. We found her age and her religion. That religion said she had no religion, and the age was listed right before that. She was sadly a little baby. We found her place of residence by our phrase wohnhaft zu, residing in Berlin. We found the parents' names by looking for our word des, our daughter of des, Tochter des. That des is a word you'll want to remember for vital records and for church records. It's used all the time to find the relationships. So her parents were Georg Ferdinand Karl Weber, and then the Anzeigende, the declarant, who is listed at the top, Marie Anna. And then the date and place of death by using our our on for the date, and our zu, our in for the death. And that was August 11th, 1880 in Berlin. So congratulations, you have now earned your 3 trophies of all your certificates. And let's see how well you paid attention. I promised you there'd be a little quiz at the end. So get your typing fingers ready. Everyone ready to answer? All right, question number 1, write it in the chat. What information will follow the clue word Are we getting any answers?
We are. Most people are saying the word date or on date.
They are correct. Perfect. You are wonderful. A+ so far. So means on. That means the date will follow. All right, number 2 is a harder one. 2 words. What words indicate the place of residence will follow? You don't have to spell it all the way correctly. Let's see if you can get it, though. Which show the place of residence.
These folks are good.
You getting it?
They're saying wohnhaft zu.
Perfect. Very good. Wohnhaft zu. 2 for 2. All right, this is going all the way back to our birth certificate. What will follow the clue words von der, of the, meaning born of the?
Well, it seems like most people are saying mother's name.
That's good. Were they a little bit more unsure of that one? That's okay.
No, some people said parents, so it's either mother's name or parent. Yep.
Okay, so we want the mother's name for that. So von der for our birth certificate, it's going to mean born of the mother. The father was not birthing any children. So let's remember von der, of the is the mother. So born of the mother, von der. All right, this one I think most of you can get. What does the number 1 mean on a marriage certificate?
Yeah, they got that. Groom.
Perfect. And what about the number 2?
Number 2 is bride.
Wonderful. And then 3 and 4?
And they're saying witnesses.
Wonderful, wonderful. Very good. All right, we have 4 more questions. Let's see how you can do. You're very much impressing me so far. What will come after the word geboren? And there's 2 answers for this. Either one or the other. Geboren.
Okay, so I'm one person is saying maiden name.
Yes.
Another
perfect.
person is saying born.
Yep, that is good. So yeah, we got the maiden name. So if you have geboren before a last name, that's going to be the maiden name. Or like we saw on our marriage certificate, it would mean born, and then the birth date would follow. So you might see geboren used 1 or 2 ways. And then this is what I think someone was trying to answer earlier. What information will come after that word des, that Sohn or Tochter des?
Okay, looks like they are saying parents' names.
Very good. That's a very important one to remember. So after that word des, that son or tochter des, you'll get your parents' names. This is our last official question. Where can you find an occupation on a vital record? Will it be before the name or after the name?
Oh, these folks are good. They remember. They say before the name.
Perfect, 100%. And then this one I think you all can get. Can you find your ancestors' information on German vital records?
Yes! Exclamation mark.
Wonderful. I love the exclamation point. I even included one myself. So wonderful job. You all get 100% A+ on the test. Congratulations. So good luck. I hope you all can find some amazing records on MyHeritage just like I did, and that you're now feeling much more confident that you know where to look and where to pull out your ancestors' information by using those clue words. You can do it.
I love it. Not only did you show them where the records are, but you helped them to figure out what's in the records, which I think is the hardest thing. So Laurel is saying, thank you so much. Love learning from you. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Fabulous job, Catherine. That's what Marcia says. So,
thank you, Marcia.
All right, let's do some announcements and door prizes. And then we'll let you sit back for a minute, Catherine, and then we'll do the Q&A. So the next MyHeritage webinar in 2 weeks will be the latest mobile features on the MyHeritage app by Gilad Katz. So you can go to familytreewebinars.com/MyHeritage webinars and register for that. The webinars are free, but you have to register to get the link to join. And if you would like to watch more webinars in the MyHeritage section of the library, you can go to familytreewebinars.com/MyHeritage. There are 286 webinars there. Here are some that were in the recent 24-hour marathon. Tell Better Family Stories with MyHeritage by Lisa Alzo. That was excellent. Using MyHeritage to research Polish family history by, I'm not going to pronounce that. I'm sorry. And then there is more at MyHeritage than family trees and photos by Fran Kiddo. So these were all, and this one, how could I forget? Michelle Leonard, Solving Unknown Parentage Mysteries with MyHeritage DNA. So a little taste of everything there. And so if you missed any of the marathon webinars, you could go check out those four. All right, now it's time to give away a door prize. Such good door prizes too. So our first door prize is a 1-year MyHeritage Complete plan. So basically they're opening the doors for you completely for 1 year. So on one side of it, you get the unlimited capacity for building a family tree and everything that goes along with that, like the online tree consistency checker. And then the other side of it is the data subscription, which is what Catherine was talking about today. So all the German records and all the birth, marriage, and death records, census records, newspapers, yearbooks, directories, all that is included in this 1-year MyHeritage Complete plan. And now I'm going to go over and pick somebody from our audience. And that's going to go to Susan Utzler. So congratulations, Susan. You have just won that. And I'm just writing down your name. You'll be getting an email from me right after the webinar so that I can get some more information from you so we can get that prize to you. And our next door prize is the MyHeritage DNA Test Kit. So you will take the DNA test kit, and when the results come in, they will provide you with your ethnicity. So whether you're German or British or whatever. And then the other side, you'll have your DNA matches. So those are the people who share DNA with you. So your DNA cousins. Let's see. So now let's pick somebody for this prize. And let's see. That's going to go to Dennis Newman. So congratulations, Dennis. You've got a DNA kit coming your way. And I will be sending you an email right after the webinar as well. And now we'll get to our questions. We'll bring Catherine back on. And I have a bunch of questions flagged here. All right, so let's see. Oops. So April is from Canada, and she's researching aristocrats during the 1700s and 1800s. And so she's interested in specific places to find records of duties associated with serving in Prussia. So I guess these are aristocrats who are in Prussia.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and wonderful you have aristocrats because they were often better documented than others. So one word you could Google is actually the word Adelsliste. So Adel means noble or nobility, and that's A-D-E-L-S. And then the word Liste, L-I-S-T-E. And that will give you a list of different nobility names. A lot of them are searchable, and you can see if there's anything related to your family on that. As for duties I'm wondering if you're and actually there's an E at the end instead of an A.
Oh,
for that list.
Sorry. Thank you.
And then actually Adelsliste.
All right. Let's see if I got it right this time. There we go.
Almost. So A-D-E-L.
A-D-E-L-F. A-D-E-L. Okay.
S,
all right.
S as in Susan.
Oh.
Hard to type in it.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Those letters
It's hard to type in a language you're not familiar with, for sure.
Okay.
So that's it. And then if you're talking about duties as related to military, there's a lot of great military sites. Fold 3 is military. That's a great site for anything related to lists, military lists and things like that. Even just looking at Google Books for military in Prussia at the time, they have a lot of great sources. So hopefully some of those will help you.
All right. We have a question here from Barbara, and her ancestors came with other Germans to Charlestown, South Carolina in 1752 from Wittenberg. She's asking, what church records are there and where would I find them for that location, for Wittenberg?
Also a great question. There is a wonderful website called Archeon. I'm going to spell again.
Okay.
A-R-C-H, like the word arch, and then I-O-N. .de, archeon.de, and that is a website, a German website, and they have been digitizing hundreds of thousands of German church records over, I think, the last 8 years or so, and they are continuously digitizing them every single day. So I would go on and check if Wittenberg is on there. It is a paid site, so you will have to have a subscription. But the good thing is you can check to see if your town's records are on there before you pay anything. And if your town is on there, people have loved it. They have had great success with it. You can do a 1-month subscription, a 3-month subscription, or a year subscription. And there are just so many great church records on there. So hopefully that will help you with yours.
Okay, great. So the last person asked about Wittenberg, and this next person, Dale, is asking about Württemberg. Are those two different places, or are they the same place?
They're different places.
Oh, okay.
They do sound similar. Yeah,
okay.
They do sound
okay. Great. Just making sure. So Dale asked, do the general Germany records include all of Germany, meaning Württemberg? Do they include that? Yes.
Oh, for MyHeritage. Yes. As far as I know, I think you'll have to go kind of play around with it a little bit to make sure that your specific town is on there. Württemberg is a state, but yeah, it's more general Germany as compared to the other collections we were talking about earlier, just like North Rhine-Westphalia or Hesse. The other ones are more general.
Okay, that was a great question because we know from other types of genealogy research that sometimes databases don't include all the information for every location. So good question.
Yes, for sure.
So do you do DNA at all or no? It's a general.
I do not.
Okay.
That is not my forte. My brain does not do science, I will say.
All right. So Victoria had a question about endogamy in Germany. So I'm going to suggest that Victoria go to the Genetic Genealogy Tips and Technique group on Facebook, and they should be able to answer your question about endogamy in Germany.
Perfect.
I think you also need to separate that by ethnic group anyway. So. Let's see. Christine says, you mentioned German Empire. Does this include Yugoslavia and Austria-Hungary as well?
No. So today's presentation was more focused on the German Empire. Those other areas had different practices for civil records. I believe they were actually later than Germany. So there is a great family search wiki page on Austrian civil records as well. So I would suggest checking that out. But again, it was, I think, not until 1938 in Austria when these records began to be kept. So if you're working with Austria, Yugoslavia, I would, at least for Austria, suggest using more church books. Okay. Those would be, and there's a great website for Austrian church books called Matricula. Okay. And yeah, you can Google it.
And Lisa is asking about Pomeranian records. Now, I'm just throwing these at you because my German geography is really bad. So would you find Pomeranian records on MyHeritage?
I would. So again, like the Württemberg, they don't have the specific collections for Pomeranian vital records at least, but I would suggest looking in the general collection to see if they have it.
Great. Let's see.
And I do want to mention one thing. MyHeritage does have additional German collections. Today we just talked about vital record collections. So there are additional church book collections. They have emigrant lists. So they might have other areas for those different collections as well. So worth checking out.
Way back when we started, well, rather when you started to, here we go. I have found it. I shared a link for all of the Germany collections on MyHeritage. So I'll put that back in the chat. So there you go. That will give you everything that MyHeritage has directly, hopefully. Let's see. Okay, here's a non-geographic one. Victoria is asking, did they usually get birth certificates quickly after the birth? So I think that's a great question. Like, is a child born and then they wait like a few months and then declare it, or do they do it quickly after the birth?
Well, keep in mind what nationality we're talking about here. Germans. What would you, based on the stereotype, what would you think?
Yeah, I would say they do it right away.
Yeah, no, that is a really great question. I'm glad you asked. And they do tend to do it quickly. A lot of times it would actually be the same day. So if you're looking at that date on the top of your record that we talked about with that and then you go down to the bottom of the record where the date of birth is listed. Sometimes it will be the same. Sometimes it would be up till 3 days after, but usually not more than 3 days.
Wow, great. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so Barbara has a document that is part in German, part in English, and she says it's a landscape document with a lot of lines and arrows, and she thinks it's a will. She's tried a few translation programs, including DeepL.com, but most are giving her gibberish back. What should she do?
I would suggest using an actual translator. DeepL.com, I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually put it on the handout. It's a better translation tool than Google Translate, but it is still machine translation. And I always, as a translator, everyone often asks me what I think of Google and DeepL. And I always say, yes, use them, but keep it to one word or a very short phrase. With German grammar being so different from English, it will tend to get garbled and gibberish, especially with genealogy, where you're working with words from hundreds of years ago that machines no longer know. it won't make sense anymore. So in this case, I would really suggest using a professional translator, a human, who can help you. And if you don't want to do the whole document, you can do sections, things like that.
Okay. And there is that Facebook group, that Genealogy Translations.
Oh, yes. That is a very good point. It's German genealogy translations. Depending on how long the will is, I don't think they would do an entire couple pages, but they are great at helping out with like little paragraphs and things like that. It's a great tip.
So Corinne is asking about GeoGen, that nifty little website for the names. Mm-hmm. And she wants to know, can you see the place names? So she says,
yes,
I just see columns. And I did it as well, Corinne, and I just saw columns as well. So how do you get the place names?
Yes, I didn't talk about it in this presentation for time, but I'm glad you asked that because I love showing people this. So let's say it's my name, Schober.
You want me to switch it back to you?
Oh, sorry, I'm not sure. Yes, I did. Sorry, I forgot I wasn't sharing my screen.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry. I forgot about that. All right. So I put in my name. Oops. Well, they might have changed it. I don't know if it's because my screen is a different resolution than normal, but normally, and I don't know if they've changed it, but normally, maybe you can all try to go to this website at home, geogen.stoppel.net. Normally right here, there's another little map. If you are seeing that little map, and I don't know if they've updated the website, which would be very sad, if there's a map right here, you can click on it. It takes you to a new page, and then there's a little box you can click, and it says Show Cities Overlay. And that will show you about 20 to 30 different cities in Germany where the names are. And I'm not sure why it's not showing up right now. I very much hope they didn't get rid of that feature. It was there last week, but just in case you do see it at home, it's a map right here. Click on the map. It will take you to a different page. And then on the right of your screen, there should be a box that says Show Cities Overlay, and you can click on that. If it's not there today, maybe check back tomorrow. Maybe the website is undergoing some sort of update, but usually that's there.
Okay, good, great. We'll have to check that out.
And I can take you.
Showing my screen again. Okay. Let's see. Oh, so Judy wants to know, are occupations ever listed on German written church baptismal records?
Yes, very often. Like I said, on vital records, they tend to be listed before the name on these vital records. On church records, you'll get both, but more often after the name. So it might say Johann Weber, comma, painter. Johann Weber, comma, laborer. So church records tend to have them more after the name, but 99% of the time they will be listed on church records as well.
Okay, great. Nancy has a question here. She says, my great-grandfather's surname was Steinberg, but he and his father sometimes appear with the surname Thomas. Is Thomas a German surname? Is there a German word for Thomas?
There is a German word for Thomas. It's written the same in English. You just pronounce it Thomas. As a surname, I'm not sure off the top of my head if it's a surname. There is a great website you can check out called namespedia.com, and you can type it in there and it will show you where that last name appears in the world. Namespedia.com, that's fun to play around with. But I've definitely heard it more as a first name than a surname. I don't know why Steinberg and Thomas are not, that's not a translation, not related. So that's a curious change there.
I think, Nancy, you're going to have to do a little contextual history, where the person immigrated to and stuff to sort of figure out why they might have changed their name. Let's see, because that's what it kind of seems like. Okay, so Roberta says, all I have from my great-grandfather is when he came over from Germany to the U.S., so that's all she knows, from Germany. How can I find more information?
Also a great question. On my website, I have a blog called Before You Cross the Pond. So if you just Google Germanology Unlocked plus Before You Cross the Pond, I have an entire article on how you can find that hometown, because that is something that is very important in German genealogy. You will need, in order to find records in Germany, you'll need to know the hometown where they came from. One of the best places that you can find a hometown by looking in the U.S. is local church records. So if you knew the town where your ancestor emigrated to, looking in those church records there, that will often list a hometown in Germany. Passenger list, naturalization records. If you happen to have a family Bible or any old photographs, sometimes a studio name on the photograph would list the town where they came from. So looking at any of those type of clues, but local church records tend to be the best place to find an actual town name.
Okay, and let's see. We did have, Janet made a comment. She said she just tried the GeoGen with her family name, and she did get the little map in the lower left corner.
I'm wondering if it's because my screen is a little bit different than it normally is, and it's not showing up. So I'm very glad that it exists. I would have been so sad if they got rid of that feature.
Yeah. So that's good to know. So if you don't see it, maybe try a different computer or something. I don't know.
Yes, or a different browser or something like that.
Well, Catherine, this has been wonderful. The audience feels empowered now to tackle these.
Wonderful.
These
German. That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah. So thank you for your time today. This has been wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for hosting me, and all of you in the audience. Thank you so much for coming, and good luck with your research.
And thanks to our audience for joining us today. Remember to sign up for the next MyHeritage webinar that's coming up, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.